I don't think this is the time for long speeches. The British people have spoken twice in both the referendum and in the general election. And whilst myself and a lot of my colleagues from the Brexit Party aren't politicians, we have enjoyed our time in the European Parliament. We have enjoyed the debate. We have enjoyed meeting people. And I think had this establishment been more democratic, it's possible that we may not have ended up with the Brexit that we're going to now have. It needs to be more flexible and it needs to change because the world is changing and it cannot stand as an isolated island of protectionism in a world that is becoming global. So I want to say that obviously some of our colleagues in Parliament don't agree with this decision, but if you believe in democracy, you have to support the fact that the British people, a majority of them, voted to leave. They didn't do it for pecuniary advantage. They didn't do it for pecuniary benefit. They did it because they wanted their sovereign nation back and they wanted to determine the way in which they took their country with an accountable parliament in Westminster. That doesn't mean to say we're leaving Europe. We're leaving the European Union. And Britain has always played a big part in the history of Europe, well before the European Union was founded. We have sacrificed much to ensure that Europe is free. And all I think now, and all I ask and plead with this establishment here, is that you behave fairly towards the British when it comes to agreeing a trade deal over the next 11 months. Because Boris Johnson has actually stated, and it's going into the legislation that is currently in front of the Lords, that there will be no extension beyond December 2020. So I think that needs to be taken very seriously. I think this establishment needs to remember that whilst we do have a large amount of trade with Europe, we have a £100 billion trade deficit with Europe. And Europe needs to remember that. It is in Europe's interest, as well as our interest, that common sense and logic prevails, that you don't try and make an example out of a country that has simply voted to take back its own democratic determination. And I think our responsibility in this Parliament is to the 500 million European citizens, and they will be hurt if an example is tried to be made of the UK. I disagree with some of the speakers. I think Britain is going to save Europe from itself yet again. We are going to show people that in a world that's interconnected, the individual is going to triumph over unwieldy, undemocratic institutions such as this, which haven't changed. So I've enjoyed serving on this committee. I've enjoyed very much serving in the European Parliament. I wish the EU well, but I fear unless you change, I can see the demise of the euro and the demise of Europe. So I hope that you will genuinely entreat with the British fairly, on the same basis that we have always entreated with you, and that we end up with the right deal for Britain and the right deal for Europe. We are, after all Europeans. Thank you.